Yo guys, how are we all doing today? It is FanFiction Reader here, and today I have nothing but apologies for you, but this time I have a very good reason. I'm not just sick, but it turns out I have COVID! Yay! So that's why I haven't been reacting. That's why I haven't been uploading as much. So yeah, that's my bad. But now that it's on its way out, I'm going to try and do it regardless, because even though my throat's a bit groggy, it might make my impressions a little bit better. So I thought, why not? So we are here with Professor Ark, Chapter 4. And yeah, we've been waiting a bit too long to get this one out, so I thought, why not just get it over and done with? You ready? Let's do this. Professor Ark, Chapter 4, of Forests Grim and Special Brew. John yawned blearily as he watched the students begin to stumble to their feet, their early risers already making their way out of the showering rooms with a vigour that made him want to cry. His eyes were fighting a losing battle for wakefulness, and his legs had given up on him hours ago. When he'd offered to take this responsibility away from Miss Goodwitch, he had been expecting a number of things. Firstly, that it would help her, and thus would integrate himself with her. She was his best source of information and advice at this academy, and he could honestly say his best supporter. Beyond that, he hoped to take what he knew would be a relatively simple task, lest the headmaster assign him something else, something that he might not have been able to handle. Either way, he'd expected to have to watch a few students get ready for bed, maybe sort out some arguments out of the worst, and then catch some rest himself. Oh, you poor fool, his treacherous ego tormented in a sing-song voice. Watching the students was the job. How can you watch them if you're sleeping? He and Port had been forced to remain awake all night, every single minute, while 99.9% of all the student body slumbered away, on the off chance that one of them might wake up and try something stupid. What, he didn't know. They were hardly going to try and do something illegal in a room full of trained combatants who could wake up at any moment. Perhaps it was more in the case of any new lovebirds deciding to get a little cozy during the night. None had. Not a single person had woken up for so much as a bathroom break, leaving Peter and he to sit leaning against the wall for a few hours, before both giving up on that and finding some chairs. His only companion, the lingering tales of Peter in his youth, which had become less and less boisterous as the night went on. Even Peter had begun to lose interest, it seemed. "Soon, lad, soon," the older teacher mumbled as he too rubbed at his eyes. At least his tiredness seemed to have been hidden behind the thick brows and long moustache. But John was beginning to see the signs of it in him too. "Soon it'll be over, and then sleep." "I cannot wait," he yawned back. His eyes picked out the figure of Ruby Rose from last night, who was making her way into the women's bathrooms to shower and change. Somehow it didn't surprise him at all to see her so energetic, nor to see her blonde sister look like a zombie as she followed her. He could relate. "Why don't you get some breakfast, my boy?" Peter offered as he nodded in the direction of the cafeteria where a few students were heading. "A quick meal and some coffee might wake you up." "Are you sure?" he asked uncertainly. While the offer did sound tempting, he was loath to abandon his newfound brother-in-arms to the waking horde. "You've done enough, my boy. Besides, the students in the cafeteria might need watching too." The man winked at him as he said that, and John let a small grin come to his face at the sneakiness of it. "Right you are. Wouldn't want them to fall prey to a rogue bagel," he joked back, and was pleased to see the man laugh in response. "Ask for the teacher's coffee," Peter whispered to him before he could leave, a serious expression on his face. "But let none hear you." Okay." He shrugged as the older man let go of him and ushered him away. Jean was quick to take the signal. His body craved nourishment almost as much as sleep. It had been over 12 hours since his last meal. The Beacon cafeteria was a stately hall, with large oaken doors, tall ornate windows along the entire wall, and long wooden tables made the room look orderly and incredibly long. From the entrance he could make out a number of serving stations, with cooks bustling away in sight. But there were also numerous vending machines dotted around the hall as well. "I suppose I should get a coffee like Peter said," he thought to himself as he wandered towards one of the empty stations. He wasn't a particular fan of the thick drink, finding it disgusting, but the caffeine would certainly be appreciated right now. "What can I get for you?" the large man dressed in white asked in a friendly manner as he smiled at John. Before him was a few plates arranged out, with various cooked meats, eggs, along with other fruits and bakery products. "I'll just have some fruit and bread," Jaune shrugged as he helped himself to one of the plates, and also added some jam to a bowl for himself. "Just finished working the shift watching the students, and I don't think I can handle anything bigger." "Oh, you're the new teacher," the large man laughed. "Graveyard shift is always the hardest, I hear." "Hey," the man whispered as he looked left and right before leaning in, mind still half clouded by the lack of sleep. Jaune didn't see anything particularly wrong with the idea of leaning his face close to a stranger who was wielding a kitchen knife, and so dipped himself forwards. Thankfully, death was not his immediate reward. "You're looking for the special brew?" the cook asked, in the manner one might if they were looking to offload some particularly volatile contraband. "The teacher's coffee?" Jaune guessed, hoping it wasn't anything more incriminating. The cook shushed him loudly, but nodded. "I'll take one, yeah. I could use the caffeine." "Oh, I hear you. I'll be back in a second. Just wait here." The man quickly vanished into a side room as Jaune sat waiting, just idly nibbling on his croissant to sate his stomach before he started to eat his own spine. A few moments later the man came out, walking slowly as he balanced something before him. "Here you go, and remember, keep it secret. Keep it safe." "Thanks," the blonde mumbled as he walked away, wondering exactly what he'd gotten himself into. The coffee looked the same as any other. A brown so dark it was close to black with a lighter edge, where it hugged the white rim. He didn't think Peter Paul would honestly trick him into taking anything illegal, though, so perhaps it would just be something heavily caffeinated that they didn't really want to give to teenagers. It kinda made sense. Finding an empty table was easy enough given how early it was, and he settled himself down before immediately lathering an overly indulgent amount of jam onto his croissant and biting into it with a gusto. The food was wonderful, still warm and fresh from baking. In the back of his mind he questioned if it was late wakers who would even experience the true beauty of it, before dismissing it as unimportant. He was experiencing it. Still, time to try this special brew, he thought to himself, as he lifted the cup in front of his eyes challengingly. The white porcelain offered no answers, no clues, and no hint of the possibilities that lay within, because it was a mug. Sighing, he lifted it towards him and took a long sip. Before the world exploded. Ghostly arms settled around him, the warmth of his mother hugging him from behind as she whispered into his ears that it would all be okay. The fresh breeze of the morning seemed to break through stone and glass to invade his nostrils and invigorate him, even as the muted noises of the students were completely erased. Bird song. There was so much. They were so high in the air, and the birds had found Beacon to be a home. Their morning song filled him with an inner peace that was hard to describe in words. It was as though he had realised the meaning of it all and was able to block out all distraction. No worries for the future or the past, only the beauty of the now. A tear of happiness pooled in the corner of his eye, before slowly trailing down his cheek before hanging there, forgotten. "Hiya!" a voice screamed from nearby, causing him to rear back as his piece crashed into a million pieces around him. Instinctively, his hands formed a protective barrier around the ambrosia, and he shifted his body in preparation to throw himself in front of whatever might seek to hurt it. "Huh?" The voice, which he now recognised as female, as he looked up to see an orange-haired girl clutching a plate of pancakes staring at him. She looked vaguely confused. "Did you just hiss at me?" she asked. "You must have imagined it," Jaune deflected, unsure of what he had actually done from being brought out of his happy place. Idly, his eyes glanced down to see that his mug was empty. When the hell did he drink it all? "Okay," the girl cheered as she plopped down opposite him, waving to her companion to do the same. He was an exotic-looking man with pink eyes and a jet of black hair, though he had a lock of pink hair running through it. "My name's Nora. This is my best friend Ren, but we're not together." "Thank you, Nora," Ren interrupted before the girl could continue on. "Lee Ren, this is Nora Valkyrie. I understand you're one of the professors here. Good morning to you." "And yourself. My name's Jaune. You can call me Jaune outside of class," he offered with a shrug, helping himself to another gracious slice of his croissant. The student, Ren, nodded in thanks, but didn't say anything as he started to eat his own breakfast. Jaune's eyes were briefly brought back to the orange-haired girl as she stabbed her fork into what would have been a stack of 8 pancakes, before lifting the entire stack up. Then she proceeded to bite into it like the suggiest ice cream in history. "Okay. Forgive me if this sounds rude," Ren interrupted, dragging Jaune's attention away from the impressive spectacle in front of him. "But you seem quite young. How did you come to be a teacher here?" Chance, more than anything, Jaune offered with a small smile, internally wondering how much he could give, both to protect himself, but also to play along with Ozpin's scheme of not appearing too inexperienced. I'm 20 years old, and was invited to teach here by the headmaster. Perhaps that was enough to say here. If they had any further questions, then they would need to seek out answers from the headmaster himself, which he doubted they would try. "You must be super strong then!" the girl cried out as she invaded his personal bubble, leaning across the table. Where had the pancakes gone? She could not have eaten them all, surely. "Can we spar sometime, Johnny?" "Professor Jaune," the boy politely corrected, as he took a sip of orange juice. "That's what I said." "Perhaps when you're a little more experienced, Nora," Jaune simply offered with a smile, sweating a little inside at the idea of fighting this crazy girl. Maybe by that time he could become more experienced himself. "Well, of course," the girl agreed, as though the comment was the most obvious she had heard in her life. "There's no way I could be the teacher now, but just you wait." Sorry about Nora. She is always like this. The more calm boy apologised as he nodded towards Jaune. In return, Jaune just smiled and shook his head. "It's fine. I'm not above casual conversation with students. Quite the opposite." He had complained in his own mind. These people were of his own age group. They could have been his best friends, or his teammates. This Nora could have been his... Nope. That thought made him feel unsafe. Friends and teammates, that sounded much better. Instead, he found himself acting older than them. And not only, but feeling older than them too. As though the mere act of speaking and reacting in a more mature manner was building a barrier he was struggling to overcome. The mere fact of it threatening to tear him down. "Ark!" a voice called out over the ruckus as more students made their way into the dining hall. Jaune leaned back to see Peter making his way into the room and calling for him. "I shall see you another time, and good luck with the initiation," he excused himself, smiling awkwardly at the girl as she made a whine of disappointment, while Ren just nodded in a polite farewell. "Have your breakfast, lad?" Peter asked as Jaune nodded in response. Good, good. I'll get mine now and cover the cafeteria. I need you to watch over the lockers, make sure nothing goes on. Just out the doors and the hallway on your left. You can't miss it. Plenty of students heading that way now." Sure. Is there anything else after this?" Jaune asked in return, invigorated from the special coffee he'd had the good fortune to be blessed with, but knowing that the rush would leave him soon enough. "They'll be called to the cliffs for initiation soon. We'll be watching over them, but then we can retire." The man grinned at Jaune. 2 hours max, lad. We're nearly there." "Alright, I'll hold the lockers then. Catch up with you later." He waved as he headed off in the direction Peter had indicated, using the crowds of students more than the directions to navigate. Thankfully, Peter had been correct in saying he couldn't miss it, as there were at least 30 students or more in that area, collecting weapons from lockers. Rocket lockers, if he remembered. He'd read about them in Glenda's notes. The idea was that you could summon your locker using your scroll, launching it to your destination, so you could have your weapons ready and available. A valuable aid, the notes had said. Downright stupidity, his mind had argued. Really? If you were caught unawares by Grimm, then you had wandered into a clearly marked forest without a weapon. Or even worse, gone outside the walls of Vale. A civilian, you might expect that from by accident, but a hunter? Though who was he to judge? Maybe it was something that only made sense to a legitimate hunter. It was while he was considering the lockers that someone bumped into his back, causing him to spin about even as the female voice complained. Professor? The white-haired girl from yesterday gasped as her eyes widened at having bumped into him again. The poor girl looked half horrified, half frustrated, and despite himself being the same age as her, and secretly finding her quite terrifying, he rushed to calm her. "Don't worry, that was my fault." He held his hands out in front of him to calm her, but refrained from actually touching her. The teachers who watched over the hall didn't get any sleep. "So, I'm afraid my mind's a little scattered." I see." The girl recovered as she looked up at him, before taking a deep breath. "I would like to formally apologise for my actions last night, Professor Ark. I was out of line, and I promise I will not act in such an undignified manner again." She finished the words by bowing her head to him briefly. Truthfully, he was more than a little surprised at the apology. He had pegged her as a particularly prideful person, and had expected her to just do her best to ignore him. "Oh, that's no problem." He waved the apology away as he laughed at her. "I can understand the tempers fry so soon after moving to a new place. We'll leave it all behind us. You can call me Jaune outside of class, by the way." He would have that known by the end of the day, even if he had to carve it into their minds by hand. "Thank you, Professor Jaune," the girl nodded, causing him to twitch a little at the worst title. "My name is Weiss Schnee, and while you're here, might I introduce you to Pira Nikos?"
"Hello,"
the girl with Weiss greeted, as Jaune turned to face her. Black lace. Good morning, he greeted, hoping his eyes weren't twitching as he looked at the red-headed goddess that stood before him. She was dressed in an ornate bronze armour mixed with red cloth that matched her brilliant red hair. And black lace. I had heard about a teacher close to our age. It's a pleasure to meet you. You must have studied extensively to gain a place here. The girl complimented as her green eyes regarded him with a clear friendliness. You have a very sexy ass. His mind greeted back. No more than anyone else, I'm sure, he deflected with a little laugh that she joined in with. Oh God, why was it so easy to talk to women and get them laughing when he was pretending to be a teacher? Water, water, water everywhere. And not a drop to drink. That's a good point, Weiss spoke, dragging his attention reluctantly away from the redhead in front of him. It was probably better this way. Where was it you studied, if I might ask, Professor? Oh, that's not a problem, Miss Schnee. I studied at Vacuo Academy for the Gifted, he replied with a small smile before wincing as all conversation about him went dead. From the corner of his eye, he could clearly see a few other students turning away from their own conversations to stare at him. The Vacuo Academy? Her eyes wide, and her face twisted with concern. I've heard about what happened. I'm so sorry for your loss, she whispered to him, her green eyes clouded with sympathy that honestly had surprised him. I'm so sorry for asking, Professor, Weiss interjected quickly as she shook her hands in front of herself. I'm sorry if I brought up any bad memories. Did everyone know about this place, other than him, before it became part of his alleged history? It's fine, Miss Schnee, he accepted with a small smile, content to refer to her by her last name since she seemed like a more formal person than what he was used to. Honestly, she seemed icier than Glenda Goodwitch, and that was saying something. Though despite that attitude and the small scar running down one eye, Jaune could admit that the white-haired girl was very beautiful. Even so, I'm sorry, she apologised. I should not have let my curiosity get the better of me, not when it comes to a member of the teaching staff. Please, don't worry, Jaune urged as he laid a hand on her shoulder briefly before smiling at her. Really, he hadn't even been to that place, but he was starting to feel incredibly guilty at having unknowingly used it. How bad had it really been for the poor people trapped there? Not all my memories of Vacuo are bad. There were more good times in the years I spent there. I think that's the best way to remember them, Pyrrha offered as she smiled at him. A gentle smile that almost seemed to be congratulating him on making the more mature and pleasant answer. It almost made him blush. If it's not too rude, Professor, might I ask how old you are? I'm 20, he lied easily with a small shrug. I was 17 when the academy went down. 3 years? Did you spend that time training again? Pyrrha asked as she tilted her head to one side, the move doing interesting things to her hair and her long, smooth neck. I spent a year or two in the ruins helping people escape. Once I had come to terms with what happened, I travelled a little, helping people where I could before applying to study here. Applying to study? Weiss asked suddenly, causing Jaune to curse angrily in his mind. Damn it. He'd gotten so distracted by the two girls and his memories of one of them less dressed the previous night that he'd forgotten the lie Ozpin wanted him to stick to. Well, yeah, please keep quiet about it, but I wanted to join here as a student, even if I am a little old. But the headmaster reviewed my credentials and decided I would be better suited as a teacher. In his words, 3 years fighting alone in the grim lands of Vacuo is more than any training can achieve. In his eyes, it was a training and graduation all in one. You mean you could have been a student here? The white-haired girl asked again, before bringing her hands down in front of her in apparent upset. You could have joined our team, she complained loudly. I agree, that would have been fabulous, the redhead smiled at him easily. No way, our team! A male voice came from the nearby crowd as students gathered around the three of them. Ours! Another argued, as the voices raised, and Jaune sighed. Yeah, he would have loved that. I see you have survived the night, the headmaster welcomed once the students had been launched off the cliffs and into the forest. If Jaune was honest, he would admit that he was glad he didn't have to face the prospect. He wasn't sure how he would survive the fall, and still wasn't sure with these students. He didn't show his discomfort though, trusting that Ozpin and Goodwitch would have not literally killed as many students in front of his eyes. Yes, though I am a little exhausted, Jaune admitted with an easy shrug. Besides Ozpin stood Glenda Goodwitch, who was busy monitoring things on her scroll. Jaune could also make out Peter looking at his own behind them. Well, that's to be expected. We won't keep you here for too long. In fact, you and Peter are excused from the official assigning of the teams. We just need to get the initiation out of the way first. The man took a long sip of his coffee before his eyes glanced to the left, where Glenda was busy. Speaking of, Mr. Ark, did you enjoy a nice cup of coffee this morning? I did, Jaune nodded easily. It was a very impressive brew, which was saying things lightly. He still felt energized, and the memory of the drink was almost enough to make him consider attacking the man in front of him, who was drinking it right now in front of him. I am glad to see you agree, Mr. Ark. Very glad to see. What's that, headmaster? The female deputy asked with a raised brow as she regarded them. To Jaune's surprise, he almost thought he saw a brief flash of panic on the headmaster's face before it was erased. "We were talking about the launching," Osmond lied easily, causing Jaune to feel a small amount of confusion. "Mr. Ark, not all agree with what we do or why we do it, but we must protect what is important to us. The launching is perfectly safe in most cases," Glenda offered in agreement. Thinking on the fly is an important skill for hunters. I'm surprised anyone would disagree with this. Jaune meanwhile raised an eyebrow at the headmaster, who was ignoring Glenda, and instead raised his mug in front of his face, as if toasting it to Jaune, while his eyes slid to Glenda, who nodded his head sideways in her direction. "I agree, it is baffling, but some believe it is unhealthy and dangerous," the headmaster replied, again lifting his coffee towards Jaune and nodding towards Glenda. "Oh," Jaune realised, nodding once towards the headmaster to show he understood. Still, it was strange to think that Glenda would be against what was obviously the best coffee on the planet. Perhaps she simply hadn't been enlightened yet. Well, yes, being launched into a grim-infested forest could be considered unhealthy, the woman in question offered with a bemused expression on her face. "Ah, we have our first pair," Peter interrupted with a shout, causing the three of them to quickly pull out their scrolls and activate the feeds that had been put into them. Jaune watched as the scroll began to display an image which showed the girl from earlier, Pyrrha, as she clapped a brown-haired girl on the shoulder, smiling kindly. Wait, were those bunny ears? He zoomed in a little further to see that the girl indeed had a pair of brown bunny ears on her head. A rabbit faunus by the looks of things. They had a bunny girl? This is so freaking unfair. I want to be on a team with them. His mind wailed at the injustice, even as he couldn't stop his eyes trailing over the cute girl's face. God damn it all. Velvet Scarlatina, Glenda Goodwitch spoke from nearby. As to his surprise, he could hear a faint level of sadness in her voice. Is there something I should know about her? Jaune asked, noticing that even Peter had a slightly fond expression on his face. Velvet was a second year at this academy, and already part of a team, Glenda answered him. She was a member of Team Coffee. As the woman paused, Jaune spared a moment to take another look at the headmaster, this time with a flat expression on his face. Yes, it was the best drink ever. But really? The man in question simply took another sip, a lost expression on his face. Jaune couldn't tell if he was thinking about the girl they were talking about, or was simply lost in his own coffee-induced haze. What happened to the team? He asked the other two teachers instead. Team Coffee is still active, Peter answered for him. The four of them were a good team, close comrades, real aspiring hunters. Close as family. Velvet was injured on her first practice mission. Though not life-threatening, the injury to her leg was bad enough that it took months to heal, and beyond that a few months of physical therapy for her to regain full usage. Though she is an adept dust mage, she also relies on martial arts involving her legs, so she could not fight if she did not recover. Before we knew it, 10 months had passed before she was able to continue her work. Though she had kept up with all her schoolwork thanks to the help of her team, Glenda trailed off sadly. She could not pass the year. Her combat skills were too low. She would have been at great risk on future missions. It was for her own good that we made the decision to make her retake the year. Did she not take it well? Jaune guessed, wondering how he might feel being taken away from friends like that. Velvet's a gentle one, Peter replied, shaking his head. She was understanding as always. Her team, on the other hand, ho ho! He laughed before grinning. Like any true team, they were not happy and refused a new member. Said there could be no replacement, that this was just till Velvet got back on her feet, and that they would take her back then. It sounded nice, Jaune thought to himself with a smile. This was all the things he would miss out on as a teacher. So it was nice to imagine himself in that situation. That is unlikely to happen, however. The headmaster entered the conversation, showing that he had been listening all along. For now, she is a first year once again, and Pyrrha Nikos is her new partner. The conversation moved on to more casual topics as Jaune scrolled through the various camera feeds, paying attention half-heartedly, as the names he didn't recognise were paired together. He even pointed out a few new partnerships to the others. The first eye contact rule had been easy enough to enforce, especially since most of the pairs had stuck to their preferred choice without too much complaint. From what he could find of the people he had met, Ruby had been paired up with Weiss in what was sure to be a rather volatile partnership. The last he had seen of them hadn't been the best impression, as the two of them almost hurt one another in friendly fire. For Ruby's sake, he hoped that they could put aside their little differences. Yang. He shivered as he thought of the name. The blonde devil had partnered with the quiet book girl with the legs from the previous night. Blake Belladonna, as Glenda made him aware. That partnership was bound to turn a few heads. all of them male. Ren and Nora had partnered quickly, so he would assume some level of foul play, but the teachers didn't seem to care, and he liked the two enough not to bring it up. From Ozpin's explanation, the ruins in the centre contained chess pieces, and the piece chosen by each pair would dictate the teams for the four. Bishops to bishops, knights to knights, and vice versa. Apparently they skipped the pawns and used both the black and white pieces from the back row. Odd, but he supposed it made sense. It was fairly simple in terms of sorting the teams out. "There's a big battle going on at the ruins," Peter spoke suddenly from nearby, causing Jean to spare him a worried glance before looking back at his own scroll and cycling through the cameras. "That's a large Nevermore," the teacher commented, and Jean finally found the feed. Oh, good lord. He could make out 8 students, literally the 8 that he knew and had made tentative friends with, arranged in a group on the bridge as the huge Nevermore dived at them. The books he read had said that they ranged from between 1 metre to a few, but that thing had been at least 40 metres across. "This looks interesting," the headmaster whispered as the 4 of them finally aligned to the same camera feed. "It looks dangerous," Jean spoke before he could stop himself, concern for his new friends warring at his sense of self-preservation. How could they be ready for such a monster when they hadn't even started their first day of training? "Your concern for your students does you credit, Mr. Ark," the headmaster spoke easily, "but worry not. Dr. Oblek is nearby and ready to intervene should the situation require it." "Oblek could kill that thing in his sleep." Peter laughed as he gave Jean a thumbs up as encouragement. Jean let out a deep breath in an effort to calm himself, but found that while the knowledge that they were safe did prevent some fear, he couldn't dismiss it. It was so big and they were so small. "The 2 teams are splitting up," Glenda analysed as the 8 figures broke into 2 sets of 4. Jean watched as the black-haired gunman Ren shouted instructions to his teammates, directing them to open fire on the Nevermore. It seemed he had a pair of automatic pistols from the look of it. While Pyrrha's weapon was capable of turning into a rifle, Nora, the one who wanted to fight him, had a grenade launcher. Oh god, no. The bunny girl, Velvet, stood in place but seemed to be speaking quietly to herself before pointing her hand towards the creature. From in front of her, a large conflagration of fire seemed to form before hurtling towards the creature and slamming into its feathers. The monstrosity turned to face them, offering its back to the other 4. "They're distracting it," he offered uncertainly, getting an agreeing sound from Glenda as she watched the scene on her own scroll. The Nevermore dived towards the 4 as the man in the green once again shouted something at the team that had them scattering. On the way past, the Nevermore clipped one of the students, sending the orange-haired girl spiraling as she slammed into the ground. "It hit her," he spoke quickly. Her aura absorbed the damage. No need for Oblek to step in just yet. Her aura. Jean's eyes widened. Holy freaking shit, aura, how had he forgotten? He'd planned to bring it up at some point when he'd gotten in as a student and have it unlocked. But with the current change of plans and his constant state of near panic, he had forgotten. He, Jean Arc, Professor of Beacon Academy, hadn't unlocked his aura. Can they sense it? What if they notice? Well, that was obvious. If they noticed, he was out instantly. The mere idea of a hunter trained for 7 years in the Vacuum Academy for the Gifted would not have his aura unlocked was freaking laughable. He had to have it unlocked. "See, they brought it down without too much trouble." Peter cheered as Jean blinked in surprise. Wait, it was over? He'd only stopped paying attention for what felt like a short time, and yet his eyes went back to the screen. He could see that the beast was already crashing into the valley, minus its head, with Ruby, the shy 15-year-old, perched on a cliff, cape flowing behind her with a scythe in hand. Okay, that's awesome. "I'm sure you're glad to see your little addition working out, eh, Ozpin?" Peter laughed as the man in question simply smiled. Jean wondered what he meant by that, but was still far too fried to question it. "The teams are all making their way back here now," Glenda interrupted. "The locators and the chess pieces are all signalling, so we know who has what. Now comes the difficult part." She sighed as she massaged her forehead, causing Jean to look a little worried. "Yes, this part is always the worst," the headmaster agreed, while Peter simply said something about wishing Oblek was here to help them. "Dare I even ask?" Jean asked anyway. "It's a tradition for the teams to have a code names that represent themselves. These must be 4 letters long that use the initial of each member of the team. These must also then form a full word." The headmaster seemed to sigh as he explained, "It is a tradition I've not been able to kill. I shall claim Team Cardinal." Glenda Goodwich piped up quickly. "Henceforth, they shall be known as Team Cardinal, led by Cardinal Winchester." "Hardly fair. Easy," Peter grumbled as he began coming up with names for another quartet that John didn't recognise. Miss Goodwich seemed to ignore Peter's ramblings as she adjusted her glasses. looking like she considered herself done with the whole ordeal. Team Naprov? Okay, he couldn't think of any words to fit that. He continued the exercise for a few moments before becoming frustrated. Seriously, it was harder than it looked, and there just didn't seem to be any words to fit it. It was the V every time. Henceforth, the team consisting of Ruby Rose, Blake Belladonna, Wai Schnee, and Yang Xiaolong shall be known as Team Ruby, short for Ruby, led by said person, Osmond declared after a few minutes, looking quite pleased with himself as he took a long sip of coffee. Besides Jean, Glenda stared at him, as did Peter. Ruby is not spelled with a W, Glenda said for the three of them. And don't you think having the entire team named after her might go to her head? I'm sorry, Cardinal, the headmaster replied easily, actually making Glenda cough uncomfortably for a moment. A lovely name, Cardinal and Ruby. Perfect. The woman surrendered. Can we use their last names? Jean asked quickly, wondering how far he was allowed to stretch this cheating. The headmaster shrugged. Honestly, you can use anything you can argue makes sense, as long as it gets the job done. The man answered back with a bored expression on his face. Beside him, Glenda launched into a quick lecture on tradition and the importance of that he seemed to tone out. Last names, but he could also maybe cheat on the V, much like how the W had been used to make a U. Team Pornogra? Okay, that was a bad idea, especially since there was a bunny girl on the team. It was 3 girls and 1 guy, the lucky bastard. His hormones really were acting up too much if he was starting to think like this. That or his sleep deprivation was kicking in. Still, it was better that he had no sleep and was stuck with a brain puzzle than having to fight a big-ass Nevermore. Wait, it wouldn't be spelled correctly, but maybe he could cheat on this one time. And it made sense considering he'd been the one to make the orders during the fight, so he would probably be the best choice as the leader anyway. Team Raven. Jean spoke, drawing the attention of the others as he did so. Team Raven, led by Lee Ren. Ah, that's a fine name, Osmond concluded with a smile on his lips. I think they'll be very pleased with that name as well. And we finished earlier than expected. Good work, Jean, Peter congratulated with a satisfied yawn behind a meaty fist. Seeing the action caused Jean to instinctively mimic it. Thank you for your work today, and taking over my shift. Why don't the two of you retire for the evening? The female deputy offered with a small rare smile that Jean wondered if he was only half imagining. She looked good when she smiled. Indeed, the headmaster agreed. We will handle assigning the teams and the rooms. Mr. Ark will be aiding Port tomorrow in classes, followed by Oblek in the afternoon. For now, take a chance to rest. Will do. Come on, lad, Peter urged as he nodded his head towards the academy. And sweet rest. But the rest wouldn't come until he had sorted out his most recent problem. He needed his aura unlocking and fast. There was no way he could talk to teachers about it, and the students were an obvious no as well. It would need to be someone outside of Beacon. Someone who wouldn't rat him out. He would have no connections to the place. Maybe he could ask the guy who made his fake documents if he knew anyone. It was risky, but surely there was someone out there who would sell the ability to unlock someone's aura. Maybe even in the criminal underground. Risky, but in for a penny. What was his name again? Roman? Okay guys, I'm going to call it there. This has been Fanfic Reader, and hopefully my very scratchy dry throat has not made this too unbearable for you all. I hope you all have an amazing new year, and next time we will have Oncoming Storm, or maybe Avengers of Steel, depending on how badly you want it. Alright then guys, I will see you all in the next chapter. Hopefully I'll be much better by then. Please like, subscribe, and if there's any more fanfiction you want to know, let me know in the comments down below. And I'll see ya.